Hi guys, we are super excited to actually unpack one of the questions that we've received from you throughout the series. And this question is, can I only get to know a girl in group settings? So we have decided we're going to discuss that and unpack it a little bit more. Obviously looking at how do you get to know somebody of the opposite sex in a way that glorifies and honors God. Do you have to stick in groups? When can you go, out for a coffee alone, etc. So here we are. What do you guys think?
I think I'll just dive right in. I think people often underestimate how well you can actually get to know people in a group setting. They're always like, no, I don't get to know the real person. But I think the real person can be gotten to know in a group setting. And it's a lot to do with the kinds of things that you actually ask the person. I found that often you're in a group surrounded by a bunch of people, but you ask important questions, and it's a safe environment where the person doesn't feel like all of a sudden this is about you and them. So the real them comes out, I'm sure you guys have experienced that as well.
Really true. I know you had a similar thing to say on that, Sean.
Yeah, from my experience, getting to know my girlfriend Laura, we were friends for 3 years before we started dating, and most of our interactions were almost entirely in group settings, and that really allowed us to get to know who we were without putting on a show or putting on an act trying to impress the other one, and really got to be friends before we then moved into a stage of, wow, this is actually a person I really share a lot of values with, and I really know, and now I really like, and now I want to date. So
and then what? Because I think, we've obviously also said, and we've charged guys and said, go ask a girl out for coffee. What would you guys say? How would you say you progress to that point? What do you think?
I think the power of dating in community is the fact that you have multiple opinions at that point. And I think which often is lacking is the fact that often when people pull the trigger, ask a date, pursue, it's already past the point of doing the maths. And it's a lot more, this individual makes me feel this way. I love it how I feel when I'm with them. But a marriage isn't built on feelings. It's built on convictions. And those are often things that you're going to have to struggle with your community. It's often that you need to bounce something off with other individuals. I have a conviction to do this, and they're like, well, that's not biblical at all. Change your conviction. Or I'm doing this, they're like, that is good, that will yield good fruit. But I think we focus on that you do all your homework before pursuing to ensure that the fallout is minimal or it leads to marriage.
You know what's so cool? Like I was saying earlier, my very limited experience in this area, but I did learn something really valuable from the last time, and that was, I remember the girl was in Joburg, and I went up to see her, and so we had a great time. And then for me, it was like, great, I had spent some good time with a friend who I'm really considering. And I got a call from her at the train station, and she goes, I'm not happy. What are we? And the shock of like having to define things. And it was like a bolt of lightning. I think it was the Lord. And I said to her, we're friends with intentions. And that kind of allowed this space in between. Sometimes we have two categories. We're friends or we're dating. And that category of friends with intentions really was very helpful for us in the way going forward. So,
which if you think about it, it's a big jump. So I think it is trying to navigate how do you actually go from that space of getting to know people in groups, which is great, and like you guys said, you can learn so much, but then transitioning to that intentional, pursuing intentional, like, okay, hang on, this could actually be something. From your experience, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely different stages and different ways to transition into the next, and before pursuing marriage and what would lead to marriage, it's so important that there's the friendship that's being pursued, and because there's so much to learn in that time, and I learned a lot about Matthew in that time, and you learned a lot about me, and it's so cool how that could happen in community, which was a safe space. Like, we could really get to know, like, this is how he interacts, or this is how he does this and this, but then also when it moved over to knowing that we really know that we are friends and we want to build on that friendship, how that was also, like you said, it's important to make the intentions clear, which I'm so grateful for that, because I've heard so many times that girls are so full of doubt, so they do not know what's going on, or what are we now, because it's just they aren't being talked about it, like, and it's so important to be like, this are our intentions, this is to know, okay, we're really just friends, so let's be friends, because it's great to have friends, but to know when it's more than that, when you're pursuing more than that, and not to think that the person is supposed to assume, or but to really talk about it, which then can lead to such a healthy way of getting to know each other more.
Yeah, and I suppose there's a safety and an honor in that as well. And if things don't actually work out, then you're not left really hurt, because there was actually a protecting and an honoring of each other, which I think is so great. Practically though, like, I'm pretty sure that that's what people want to hear, is well, even Sean, I mean, you've recently been through this. What would you say, how did you take that step to actually, go from the intentional dating to, okay, this is actually it. We've decided we actually want to pursue things further.
So I think it was that thing of, now we built this friendship. Now I'm seeing her kind of one-on-one couple of times, but it was very much even then a process of being in community. So I wasn't just, so even when we're seeing each other alone, it was in a public space, getting coffee somewhere, getting ice cream. It was quite funny. I think almost every time I took her out, someone from church walked past, and it was actually great, because for me it gave me this a feeling of safety of people know that I'm doing this. I'm not trying to hide the fact that I'm seeing her one-on-one. But it was also then that people were like, oh, you guys are kind of spending time together, and I was able to say, hey, yes, these are actually my intentions. And I was able to go to people, people I trust, and like Fifi, for example, and be like, hey, so these are my intentions with her. This is where we're going so far. Help me understand. Do you think this is going to work? Is this right? And kind of process all those intentions and make sure that we're still doing things in an honorable way. And then I think it came to, I've prayed about this, I've processed this with friends, family, people in church who are older and wiser than me. And then I asked her out. It didn't just then slide into this, okay, now we together, we've been spending time together, now we a thing. There was an intentional then distinction of me taking her out for breakfast and saying, I want to date you, will you be my girlfriend? And then even that, then bringing people into that, so people know and are aware of this is who we are, so they can also keep us accountable in honor and in purity.
That's really good.
Can I comment on that? And one of the things that really stood out about your whole situation, I know we're not talking specifically about Sean, but I think most Christians would agree that the internal things are really more important than the external things.
That's really good.
Obviously, you should be attracted to the person, but most of the time we don't give ourselves enough time to get to know the deeper things in friendship, really, because then all of a sudden that attraction is more important than the external attractions. And if you go too quick and you don't actually spend significant time in the group setting, you'll be attracted like the world does, which is the external things. And then at the end we're like, oh, you weren't who I thought you were. Well,
sure.
No surprise there.
What I also liked about what Sean said is the intentionality, and that's something people don't realize. That's one of the foundations to build a healthy marriage on. Because so often we drift apart. You get people that get divorced and it's like, how did this even happen? It's simple. People stop being intentional. And it's because they never got taught. They never cultivated intentionality in their lives. This is something that will determine if your marriage is make or break. You have to be intentional about pursuing your spouse, your wife. You have to be intentional about defining what type of marriage you have. So many people want to just feel things and see things. Nobody's being taught to be intentional. You're not going to succeed on lack of intentionality.
Sure. It's really good principle. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of being intentional with the pursuit, but something I learned in the time when Matthew and I got to know each other was, so I'm actually an introvert, I'm a very private person, so I don't usually share, but I had the biggest desire to get to know Matthew. And I had the biggest admiration for him, but I had to learn that I had to allow him to get to know me.
Sure.
And in that, I learned the difference between having boundaries, which we always need, it keeps us safe and it protects us, but the difference between boundaries and walls that I put up. Because those walls that I realized that I put up those walls to kind of hide myself or keep others out, and that is even more dangerous because there would have never been able to be something more if I never allowed Matthew to get to know me. So I don't know if I could speak to any girl who's maybe very shy or more used to keeping things for yourself. Like, we must realize that there's a difference between guarding our hearts, which is great, but also locking up our hearts and hiding it away for everyone. Because we have to let people in, and it's so safe to do that first with our friends, with our girlfriends as a girl, with our sisters, and then learning to do it in a safe space, within boundaries, with our brothers, then with our friends, with when it comes to being my boyfriend or my fiance or my husband. It's good to see the development and how we can grow then in that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That is gold.
Wow. Guys, I think we have done a really good job wrapping up this topic.
I have one last comment.
Nice, please.
Really, sorry, I'm talking a lot. But I suppose maybe it's because I'm listening. but I think one of the things I realize is that in our day and age, we put a lot of effort at finding the person, but not a whole bunch of effort at creating a large enough pool of people who you know well. And for both guys and girls, one of the things to do is to create as large a pool of people that you know well, because that's a place of safety. So you're not constantly being like, oh, I'm getting to know this person from across the pond. Often the people that we end up with are the people who are immediately around us. So spend time actually cultivating friendship.
So good. Yeah, as the saying goes, he with the most friends wins. So that's a good place to start.